The distress beacon of the Pathfinder 7 blared through the ship's command center as Marcus Reed frantically worked the controls. Warning lights flashed across every panel, and the vessel shuddered violently as it plummeted through the atmosphere of the uncharted planet below. System failure imminent. Emergency landing protocols engaged, announced the ship's AI in its unnervingly calm voice. Tell me something I don't know, Nexus. Marcus shouted over the cacophony of alarms. His fingers danced across the navigation panel, trying desperately to maintain some semblance of control over the dying spacecraft. The ship had sustained critical damage passing through an unexpected asteroid field on the edge of the Cygnus system. Now, Marcus found himself hurtling toward a mysterious blue-green world that wasn't supposed to be here, at least not according to any of Earth's star charts. Through the viewport, he watched as dense jungle canopy rushed up to meet him. The Pathfinder 7's engines gave one final, defiant roar before cutting out completely. Marcus braced himself against the pilot's chair, his knuckles white against the safety harness. Impact in 5 seconds, Nexus announced. 4. 3. The world exploded into chaos as the ship plowed through the upper layers of the forest canopy. Metal screamed against wood, and the hull crumpled under the impact forces. Marcus's head slammed forward, then back, as the emergency restraints fought to keep him secure. When the ship finally came to rest, an eerie silence fell over the cockpit, broken only by the gentle hiss of escaping oxygen and the occasional spark from damaged circuitry. Nexus. Marcus called weakly, tasting blood on his lip. Status report. No response came from the ship's AI. The main systems were completely offline. With trembling hands, Marcus unfastened his harness and struggled to his feet. Pain shot through his left leg, and he grimaced, noting a nasty gash running along his thigh. He limped to the emergency medical kit and quickly dressed the wound, applying a regenerative sealant that would stop the bleeding and accelerate healing. Could be worse, he muttered to himself, surveying the wreckage of what had been his home for the past 3 years. The Pathfinder 7 had been part of Earth's ambitious solo exploration program, one pilot, one ship, charting the unknown reaches of space. Now it was little more than scrap metal embedded in alien soil. Marcus gathered what supplies he could salvage: emergency rations, water purification tablets, a portable scanner, and his personal multi-tool. As he worked, he tried the emergency beacon, but the signal was weak. Help would come eventually. Earth wouldn't abandon one of their explorers, but it might take weeks, even months for a rescue team to pinpoint his location in uncharted space. The damaged ship's life support was failing rapidly. He needed to assess the external environment and determine if it was survivable. The scanner showed breathable atmosphere, Earth-comparable gravity, and no immediately detectable toxins. Small mercies. Marcus unsealed the emergency hatch, and a rush of warm, humid air filled his lungs. It smelled of vegetation and rich soil, so achingly similar to Earth that for a moment, homesickness overwhelmed him. Steeling himself, he climbed out onto the ship's hull and got his first clear view of his surroundings. The jungle stretched in all directions, a riot of colors unlike anything he'd seen before. Plants with impossible purple and blue hues twisted toward the sky, while strange, luminescent fungi clung to the trunks of massive trees. In the distance, he could make out a small clearing where sunlight streamed through the canopy. A movement caught his eye, something approaching through the undergrowth. Marcus tensed, reaching for the small pulse pistol at his hip. Earth's first contact protocols were clear: observe, communicate if possible, but protect yourself at all costs. The foliage parted, and Marcus froze in astonishment. They were unmistakably humanoid, bipedal with 2 arms, a head, and features that mirrored human anatomy in most respects. But there the similarities ended. Their skin was a vibrant emerald green that seemed to shimmer with inner light. Their eyes were larger than human eyes, with irises that ranged from deep violet to brilliant amber. Most strikingly, they were all female, at least in appearance. 5 of them emerged from the jungle, each carrying what looked like spears tipped with crystalline points. They moved with a fluid grace that spoke of perfect harmony with their environment. Their clothing appeared to be made from woven plant fibers in complex patterns that shifted color with their movements. "Hello," Marcus called out, keeping his voice calm and even as he raised his empty hands to show he carried no weapons. "I mean no harm. My ship crashed." The women stopped, conferring amongst themselves in musical tones that his universal translator couldn't decipher. One of them, taller than the rest, with intricate silver markings on her arms and face, stepped forward cautiously. "You speak?" she asked, her voice lilting and accented but unmistakably in English. Marcus blinked in surprise. "Yes, I speak. You understand my language?" The woman tilted her head, studying him with undisguised curiosity. "We understand many languages. The archive teaches us. But you?" Her gaze traveled over his body with a mixture of fascination and wariness. "You are not like us. What are you?" "I'm human," Marcus replied. "My name is Marcus Reed. I'm an explorer from Earth." The women exchanged rapid glances, their expressions a mixture of surprise and something that looked like recognition. "Earth," the leader repeated, as if tasting the word. "The lost world of legend." Before Marcus could process this startling statement, another of the women spoke up, her voice high with excitement or alarm. "Talia, look at its form. The structure is different. It has no luminescent patterns. And the voice, so deep." Talia, evidently the leader, stepped closer to Marcus, her amber eyes narrowed in concentration. "What manner of female are you? Why do you appear this way?" Marcus ran a hand through his short brown hair, realization dawning. "I'm not female. I'm male, a man. Don't you have males in your society?" The reaction was immediate and dramatic. The women stepped back, hands tightening on their spears. They spoke rapidly to each other in their melodious language, gestures growing animated. "Male," Talia finally said, pronouncing the word carefully. "We know this word from the old stories, but none have been seen in living memory. The legends speak of a time when there were both kinds, but that was before the Great Change." Marcus's explorer training kicked in. This was unprecedented, a human-like species that had apparently evolved or adapted to reproduce without males. The scientific implications were staggering. "I won't hurt you," he reiterated, sensing their unease. "I'm stranded here until my people can find me. I just need to survive until then." Talia conferred briefly with her companions before turning back to Marcus. "You will come with us to Luminera. The council must see this, male. They will decide your fate." "Luminera? Is that your settlement?" "Our city," corrected one of the other women, her violet eyes regarding him with undisguised suspicion. "The last great city of our people." As Marcus gathered his salvaged supplies, he noticed one of the younger women approaching his ship, her hand outstretched in wonder toward the damaged hull. "Careful," he warned. "Some of the systems might still be dangerous." The woman jumped back, startled, before her expression transformed into one of fascination. "It speaks to protect," she observed to Talia. "Like a guardian would. Do not be too quick to assign familiar traits to an unknown being, Lyra," Talia cautioned, though her own expression betrayed curiosity. "Come, male human. Follow us." With little choice, Marcus shouldered his pack and fell in line with the emerald-skinned women. As they led him deeper into the jungle, he couldn't help but feel that he had stumbled upon something momentous, a society that had either forgotten or evolved beyond the need for males. A living experiment in human evolution, if these people were indeed related to humanity as Talia's recognition of Earth suggested. The jungle seemed to come alive around them as they walked, plants turning toward the women as if drawn to their presence. Marcus noticed small patches on the women's skin glowing faintly in rhythm with their movements, some kind of bioluminescence, perhaps. The jungle recognizes its daughters, Talia explained, noticing his observation. As we nurture it, it nurtures us in return. And what will happen to me in Luminara? Marcus asked, acutely aware of his alien status among them. Talia's expression grew serious. That depends on what the council determines about your nature, male human. Some will see your arrival as a threat to our way of life. Others may view it as a sign from the ancestors. And what do you think? Marcus ventured. For the first time, Talia's composed demeanor faltered, her amber eyes reflecting uncertainty. I think you are the beginning of change, Marcus Reed of Earth. Whether that change brings renewal or destruction remains to be seen. As they continued their journey through the alien yet strangely familiar jungle, Marcus couldn't help but wonder what kind of society had evolved here, and how it would react to the first male they had seen in generations. One thing was certain, his mission of exploration had just become far more complex than charting unknown star systems. Behind them, barely visible through the dense foliage, the damaged remains of the Pathfinder 7 continued to emit a faint distress signal into the void of space, calling for a rescue that might arrive too late to find a recognizable Marcus Reed. The journey to Luminara took several hours, winding through increasingly dense jungle that seemed to part willingly for Talia and her companions. Marcus struggled to keep pace, his injured leg throbbing despite the medical sealant. The women moved with an innate grace that made his human clumsiness all the more apparent. We approached the outer boundary, Talia announced as they reached a massive wall of intertwined trees forming a natural barrier. She pressed her palm against the trunk of the largest tree, and her hand emitted a soft green glow. In response, the vegetation began to shift, creating an opening in the living wall. Marcus couldn't suppress a gasp of wonder as Luminara came into view. The city was a breathtaking integration of nature and technology, structures that appeared to be grown rather than built rose organically from the forest floor. Bridges of twisted vines connected dwellings nestled in the canopies of enormous trees. Pools of crystal-clear water dotted the landscape, their surfaces shimmering with bioluminescent organisms. Most striking were the inhabitants themselves. Hundreds of green-skinned women moved through the city, their skin patterns glowing with varying intensities. Some wore elaborate silver markings similar to Talia's, while others displayed simpler designs. The moment they spotted Marcus, all activity ceased. A wave of silence swept through Luminara, followed by a rising murmur of voices. What is that? Its skin, so pale. Is it diseased? Look at its strange form. Children, all female, peered from behind their guardians, eyes wide with curiosity. Several of the city's inhabitants approached, reaching out as if to touch Marcus before Talia firmly waved them back. The male human is under my protection until the council convenes, she announced loudly. None shall approach without permission. A path cleared through the crowd as an elderly woman approached. Her skin was a deeper emerald than the others, and her silver markings formed intricate patterns across her entire body. She carried herself with unmistakable authority. Elder Vestra, Talia greeted her with a respectful bow. We found this being in the western reaches. His vessel fell from the sky. Vestra's penetrating gaze studied Marcus with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. I have lived 9 cycles, young one, and never did I think to see a male with my own eyes. The archive spoke truly of your kind's appearance. You know about humans? Marcus asked, surprised. We know of the ancestors, Vestra replied cryptically. Come. The full council must be assembled immediately. As they proceeded through the city, Marcus felt countless eyes upon him. Some gazes held fear, others fascination, and a few unmistakable hostility. He noticed the city's technology more clearly now, lighting systems powered by the same bioluminescence the women displayed, water filtration systems integrated with living plants, and communication devices that seemed to utilize the natural conductivity of the vegetation. They arrived at a vast structure at Luminara's center, a building resembling a massive flower, its petals partially unfurled to reveal a council chamber within. 7 elderly women seated in a semicircle awaited them, their silver markings more elaborate than any Marcus had seen. "Esteemed council, I present the male human called Marcus Reed," Talia announced formally. "He claims to come from Earth." A collective intake of breath swept through the chamber. One of the council members rose, her expression severe. "Earth is a myth, a story from the archive's oldest records," she proclaimed. "This creature must be from one of the outer colonies." "I assure you, Earth is quite real," Marcus interjected. "I was born there. Our exploration program sent me to chart this region of space 3 years ago." "It speaks with authority," another council member observed. "Like the guardians of old." Vestra raised her hand for silence. "What matters is not where it came from, but what its presence means for Luminara. The prophecies speak of change coming from the stars." "The prophecies also speak of destruction," countered the severe council member. "We must consider the safety of our people." "I mean no harm," Marcus assured them. "My ship crashed. I'm just trying to survive until rescue comes." Vestra's eyes narrowed. "Rescue? More of your kind will come." "Eventually, yes. Earth keeps track of all explorers. When they realize I've gone off course, they'll send a search party." This information sparked intense debate among the council members, their musical language flowing too quickly for Marcus to follow. Finally, Vestra addressed him again. "Until we determine what your presence means for our people, you will remain under guard. Talia will be responsible for you. You will answer her questions about your kind, and perhaps we will answer some of yours in return." "What about my ship? I need to check if any systems can be salvaged." "Lyra and her research team will examine your vessel," Vestra decided. "They will report their findings to the council." With that, the meeting concluded. Talia led Marcus to a small dwelling near the edge of the central plaza, a simple structure with living walls that seemed to breathe and pulse with the same rhythm as the forest. "These will be your quarters," she informed him. "Food and water will be provided. I suggest you rest. Tomorrow begins your education in our ways, and ours in yours." "Can I ask something first?" Marcus ventured. Talia hesitated, then nodded. "You all seem to know about Earth, about males, even though you've never seen one. How is that possible?" Talia's luminescent patterns dimmed slightly. "The archive contains the knowledge of our ancestors. It speaks of Earth, of the time before the Great Change when our people had both females and males. But these are matters for the council to discuss, not me." "One more question," Marcus pressed. "You call yourselves Luminara, like your city. What were your people called before, in the archive's records?" For a moment, Talia's composure faltered. "Once, long ago, we were called human," she said quietly before sealing the entrance, leaving Marcus alone with this startling revelation. The next morning, Marcus awoke to find fresh clothing folded beside his bed, garments woven from the same color-shifting fibers the Luminara wore, though modified to accommodate his different physiology. A breakfast of unfamiliar fruits and what appeared to be a protein-rich grain waited on a small table. As he finished eating, the dwelling's entrance opened to reveal Talia accompanied by a younger woman carrying various instruments and recording devices. "This is Nissa," Talia introduced. "Our foremost scholar of biology. The council has instructed her to document your physical differences from our people." Nissa approached eagerly, her violet eyes bright with scientific curiosity. "The archive describes males, but seeing one in reality is quite different," she remarked, circling Marcus with undisguised fascination. "Your muscle distribution, skeletal structure, the absence of luminescent glands, all fascinating adaptations." "I'm not the one who's adapted," Marcus pointed out. "If your people originated from Earth, it's the Luminara who evolved." "A matter of perspective," Nissa replied with a smile. "May I take measurements? Tissue samples? The council is particularly interested in your reproductive biology." Marcus felt heat rise to his face. "I'd prefer to keep some privacy in that department, if you don't mind." Talia interceded. "Basic physiological data will suffice for now, Nissa. The male human's comfort must be considered if we wish for cooperative exchange." After an hour of relatively non-invasive examination, measuring height, weight, muscle density, and reaction times, Nissa departed with her data, leaving Marcus alone with Talia. "Now it's my turn to learn about you," she announced. "The Council wishes to understand your society, your purpose among the stars, and whether your presence represents opportunity or threat." "Fair enough," Marcus agreed. "Where should I begin? Tell me of Earth. Does it still thrive? The archive speaks of overpopulation, resource depletion, and conflict." Marcus considered his answer carefully. "Earth faced many challenges, but we've made progress. Environmental restoration efforts began in earnest a century ago. Population stabilized. We developed sustainable technologies and eventually looked to the stars not just for resources, but for knowledge." As they talked, Talia led Marcus through Luminara. The initial shock of his presence had somewhat diminished, though children still pointed and whispered as they passed. Marcus observed the Luminara society with equal curiosity, their communal child-rearing practices, their intricate social hierarchy based on knowledge and contribution rather than wealth or power, their harmonious relationship with their environment. "How do you reproduce without males?" he finally asked the question that had been puzzling him since his arrival. Talia's luminescent patterns shifted, what Marcus was beginning to recognize as a sign of emotional response, perhaps embarrassment. "The great change altered our biology," she explained. "The details are complex, but essentially, when a woman reaches maturity, she can choose to enter the Genesis pools during the lunar conjunction. The pool waters, infused with specific bacterial agents and energized by the moon's alignment, allow for genetic recombination without requiring male genetic material." "Artificial parthenogenesis," Marcus murmured, amazed. "But that would limit genetic diversity over time." "Yes," Talia admitted. "It is one of our greatest concerns. Each generation shows slightly less variation than the last. The Council believes we have perhaps 20 more generations before genetic viability becomes critical." Their tour brought them to a vast garden at Luminara's center, where women of all ages tended plants with medicinal properties. One plant in particular caught Marcus's attention, a large flower with petals that shifted between blue and purple, reminiscent of earth orchids. "That's impossible," he breathed, approaching the plant. "This is a Terran midnight orchid. It's native to Earth." Talia watched him carefully. "The archive calls it the ancestor bloom. It is sacred to us, one of the few plants that survived the journey." "Journey? From Earth to here, you mean?" Marcus pressed, excitement building. "Talia, how long ago did your ancestors come to this planet?" "The archive records speak of 300 cycles since the first landing," she replied. "Though some passages suggest distortions in the timekeeping during the early cycles." Marcus's mind raced with calculations. "That aligns with Earth's first wave of colony ships, the generation ships launched before faster-than-light travel was perfected. But those ships were sent to mapped systems. This planet isn't on any chart." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Lyra, her expression troubled. "Talia, the research team has examined the male human's vessel," she reported. "The technology is advanced, yet familiar. Some components interface with our systems as if designed to be compatible." "That's not possible," Marcus protested. "Earth technology wouldn't be compatible with yours after centuries of separate development. Unless," Talia said slowly, "our technology and yours share a common origin." A commotion at the garden's entrance drew their attention. Elder Vestra approached rapidly, her face grave. "The Council summons you both immediately," she announced. "Nissa's preliminary findings have caused concern. And there is more, the archive is responding unusually to the data about the male human. Systems long dormant have activated. As they hurried toward the council chamber, Marcus noticed increasing agitation among the Luminara they passed. Some regarded him with newfound fear, others with something approaching reverence. "What's happening?" he asked Talia quietly. Her luminescent patterns pulsed with anxiety. "Your presence here is catalyzing something, Marcus read. The archive contains prophecies about the return of the ancestors, and warnings about what that return might herald." "What warnings?" Talia's amber eyes met his, filled with uncertainty. "That with the return of the ancestors comes the awakening of that which sleeps beneath Luminara. The technology that the founders sealed away after the Great Change, technology they deemed too dangerous for us to control." As they entered the council chamber, Marcus realized that his simple crash landing had set in motion events with consequences neither he nor the Luminara fully understood. Something long buried was stirring, and his arrival had somehow triggered its awakening. In the center of the chamber, a holographic display had activated, showing what appeared to be an ancient map, a map that Marcus recognized with a shock as the original Earth colony expansion plan from nearly 3 centuries ago. And at its center, a world that should not exist, planet Luminara, designated originally as Terra Nova.